What's up, y'all? What's the lick read? What's the lick read? What's the lick read? What's the motherfucker lick read? What's up, y'all? What's up, y'all? What's up, y'all? Just to let y'all know, I ain't playing with y'all motherfuckers. Huh? Where the shot glass at? Where the shot glass at? Real life, where the shot glass at? Oh, it's over there. I'ma kill it since it's only got a little bit. I ain't gonna dirty it up no more. Ooh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Ooh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Ooh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Ooh, yeah. La 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 la. I'm just fucking with y'all. I'm gonna watch something that I didn't get to watch with y'all earlier. Which is the breakdown, of course. Shut up. Knew what y'all saying. Only watched the first episode, so that means I'm on the second episode. There we go.
MJ. I'm John. Banking card and marriage registration.
Something they can make you do
Married?
Yeah, sir. Make you do right.
Let me kill this.
They didn't bring up that we'd be paired until the last interview.
It's an old KGB tactic. They draw less attention as a couple.
Very romantic.
What is it that you two do?
Weird software change. Administer single dose, no casualties.
Fries on deck.
Do you think if the company hadn't matched you, you'd be compatible?
You're sitting underneath a shelter I made. I made this fire. I got you this fish. Shelter, food, fire, water.
No.
Maybe. Work, life, romance. They're all part of the same project.
You said you love me.
Yeah, you did too.
We're about to die.
So you didn't mean it?
No, I didn't.
That's cool.
Don't do that.
Sorry.
It's a show.
It's just a job. It is not life and death. Do you feel better?
Echo Episode 2 answers one of the show's biggest mysteries, but it also opens up the door for Maya to... Echo Episode 2 answers one of the show's biggest mysteries, but it also opens up the door for Maya to become a key member of the street-level Avengers team that Marvel is probably assembling, preferably with Spider-Man and Daredevil leading the team against the Kingpin. Basically, I think she's going to be a cooler, much more interesting Iron Fist. Welcome to Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Airy, and this is all the Easter eggs, references, and little things you might have missed in episode 2 of Echo. And before we break this baby down, I just gotta thank all of you for watching and continuing to support us by shopping at our merch store, where we make all the merch ourselves. Now, in celebration of Echo and the return of Kingpin and Daredevil, we have new shirts this month. The Nelson vs. Murdoch Vigilante Justice tee, Doug as Daredevil, Murdoch and Nelson Law and Order t-shirt, and this sweet Return of the King. Also, on our merch store, you can buy tickets to our very first live show in Brooklyn, New York on February 22nd, where you can meet me and the rest of the Screen Crush team. We're going to talk about things that they don't let us do on the channel, show exclusive videos, and even have a Q&A plus meet and greet. Guys, thank you so much for watching. The link for all that is below. Now let's get started. So, we start with the Marvel logo, with the sound of an EKG machine in a hospital. Now, this is connecting to the ending of episode 1 when we saw Kingpin in a hospital room, but it also resonates with Maya and Daredevil. Daredevil, of course, is blind, but he can detect enemies by listening to their heartbeats, while Maya, who is Daredevil's enemy turned lover in the comics, can't hear anything, but she can feel her own heartbeat. The first time she killed a man last episode, she focused on her own heartbeat. And every time the show places us in her shoes, the sound of the world is tuned out, and all we can hear is what she feels, her own heart beating inside her chest. But I also want to mention that one of our team members, Brianna McFlurry, took a more literal interpretation of this. When she's holding the man, she can feel his heart.
All right, y'all, that's it. I just wanted to eat the fries on the stream. So, yeah, I'm about to get off now. So, yeah, deuces. Y'all fuck with me, I'll fuck with y'all. All right, deuces. Let's look at that. Can y'all fucking imagine?
This attention to the myth and focus on the heart makes me wonder if we will see a mythical Choctaw creature called the Glass Water Drop. This is a shadow being that only makes its visible out of her chest. But I also comics can't hear anything, but she can feel her own heartbeat. The first time she killed a man last episode, she focused on her own heartbeat. And every time the show places us in her shoes, the sound of the world is tuned out, and all we can hear is what she feels, her own heart beating inside of her chest. But I also want to mention that one of our team members, Brianna McFlurry, took a more literal interpretation of this. When she's holding the man, she can feel his heartbeat, and it escalates as he's dying until she kills him and the heartbeat finally stops. Now, this show is very steeped in the myth and lore of the Choctaw Nation, and the writers even submitted their scripts to tribal leaders to gain their approval. So, this attention to the myth and focus on the heart makes me wonder if we will see a mythical Choctaw creature called the Glass Water Drop. This is a shadow being that only makes its own heart visible. When people focus on this creature's heart, it leads them astray. Just like Maya's quest for revenge, following her heart, following her anger and emotions, seems to be leading her astray. She's trying to take over the Kingpin's empire instead of trying to tear it down.
It will be mine. Oh, yes. It will be mine.
The episode begins with a very cool tracking shot beginning underneath the water on the bottom of a Choctaw canoe. And notice here how the oars are actually shaped like leaves. Very cool detail showing how they are drawing inspiration for their architecture and tools from nature. And then the camera pulls back to reveal a
Heard something fall. I heard it again. It's not like you in here though. Like right by me type shit. Oh well. If I die, I die. Stupid looking ass.
Choctaw settlement in what is now out. The episode begins with a very cool tracking shot beginning underneath the water on the bottom of a Choctaw canoe. And notice here how the oars are actually shaped like leaves. Very cool detail showing how they are drawing inspiration for their architecture and tools from nature. And then the camera pulls back to reveal a Choctaw settlement in what is now Alabama in 1200 AD. Now notice how flourishing this civilization was. Great mounds, protected walls, freestanding structures instead of the teepees they always showed us in old westerns. Like, I bet a lot of people didn't even know that there was civilizations like this across the United States. And that's because history books tend to show Native American tribes as most white settlers found them when they were devastated by disease. What do you mean by that? Well, after the Spanish landed on this continent in the 1500s, they brought diseases that spread throughout North America and killed upwards of 90% of the indigenous population. So, by the time the Mayflower landed in the 1600s, they found natives that were already struggling to keep their civilizations alive. So what we see in history books is often reflected as the remnants of these once great civilizations. And just overall, I love how the show is doing such a great job of preserving the Choctaw culture and language. Do you speak Choctaw? No, do you? No, but I am going to learn a new language this year. I'm finally going to learn Hattus. Wait, listen. Hattis is not a real language. It's just a bunch of gibberish they made up on set. Oh, really? Really. But there are other fictional languages like Klingon or Elvish you can learn, or you can make it your New Year's resolution to learn an actual language with Babbel. They're the sponsor of this video. Babbel makes learning a new language so easy. QR code. Like, I was always too intimidated to start a new language, but Babbel makes it so easy. And I am telling you, Babbel really works. University studies have shown that 15 hours of Babbel equals an entire semester of college Spanish. And they offer lessons in 14 different languages. For instance, a couple years ago, I went to Italy, and thanks to Babbel, I was able to order in restaurants and find my way around Rome. Babbel has a few different subscriptions to choose from. So, if you're interested in learning a new language, this is a great opportunity to try it out. Plus, they offer a 20-day money-back guarantee, so you can try and see if it's right for you. Click our link in the description or scan this QR code to get started today. Alright, so back to echoes. Some of these mounds featured in the Choctaw City actually still exist today, scattered across the southern United States. And I just want to point out that we recently saw another indigenous civilization recreated in the MCU, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, in the show What If. And that village also featured period-accurate protective walls around the village. Then the camera, which by the way is still in that single shot that was coming from the river, pushes in past the walls to show the Choctaw playing stickball. This is still played to this day. Now, the game had several functions in their society. Sometimes it was just for recreation or festivals, but other times the games were actually used as a substitute for war. Instead of engaging in battle and causing bloodshed, different tribes would settle disputes from these games, and then they would all agree to accept the outcome, which is why DiloStackx says,
when you live with moderate to severe Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis, your day can be full of reminders of your condition.
Oh, I forgot I had some in this bowl already. Yay!
Always wondering. You weren't made for UC or Crohn's, but Gut Focus Entyvio is. Entyvio works at the site of the problem to block certain inflammation-causing cells from entering the gut. Infusion and serious allergic reactions can happen during or after treatment. Entyvio may increase risk of infection, which can be serious. Although unlikely, a risk of PML, a rare, serious, potentially fatal brain infection, can
Entyvio.
And I think it's so interesting that modern, or festivals, but other times the games were actually used as a substitute for war. Instead of engaging in battle and causing bloodshed, different tribes would settle disputes from these games, and then they would all agree to accept the outcome, which is why DiloStackx says, and I think it's so interesting that modern, Western sports kind of do the same thing. What do you mean? Do you mean like how the Yankees and the Red Sox play each other so New York and Boston don't go to war? Kind of, but not really. I mean, sports do allow for nationalism to have an outlet that is, healthy and productive. It doesn't get anyone killed. Like, for instance, we have the World Cup, or how the football rivalry between the Rangers and Celtics allowed the Catholics and Protestants in the UK to work out their differences without bloodshed. Now, as the camera pushes in on this match, notice how the aspect ratio shifts. We go from the standard 16:9 aspect ratio into this 1:4.
Didn't notice that.
To work out their differences without bloodshed. Now, as the camera pushes in on this match, notice how the aspect ratio shifts. We go from the standard 16:9 aspect ratio.
See, that's why I gotta watch that show again.
For nationalism to have an outlet that is like healthy and productive and doesn't get anyone killed. Like, for instance, we have the World Cup, or how the football rivalry between the Rangers and Celtics allowed the Catholics and Protestants in the UK to work out their differences without bloodshed. Now, as the camera pushes in on this match, notice how the aspect ratio shifts. We go from the standard 16:9 aspect ratio into this 1:4:3 IMAX ratio to really show the scope of these games. The games are also shot with a wide-angle lens. Notice the distortion we see here at the edge of the frame, and thanks to our lead editor Randolph Nombrado for that observation. So our hero Loak is easily winning until the other team brings in a heavy ringer off the bench. Now notice how Loak was winning with speed and agility. The big guy is able to muss his way out of the scrum to control the ball. Now Loak, this episode reveals, is indeed Maya's ancestor like we theorized last episode. I promise I didn't watch ahead. I actually just came up with that theory when we wrote the episode 1 video. Later in the episode, Scully says,
They're tricky. You can never predict when they might come calling.
now look, we'll talk about Maya's ancestors gaining her powers in just a bit, but for now, we can see many parallels being drawn between the ancestors and Maya. Loak goes up against somebody bigger and stronger than her, like how Maya is going up against the Kingpin in the present day. So, in this scene, we see Loak drawing from the power of her ancestors, Chaka and the Proto-Choctaw who still lived inside the earth. Now, the consequences of the loss are that she and her people will be banished from this land. And this goes back to something we talked about last episode. Human civilizations have always been either nomadic or agrarian, hunters or farmers, and the pendulum often just swings between the two, with one replacing the other throughout human history. Maya had roots in Oklahoma, but then a tragedy forced her to uproot and become more of a nomad. And now we're seeing the same fate about to befall her ancestor. Similarly, in the modern day, Maya's aunt does not want her to stay in Tahoma. She wants her to move on. In effect, much like Loak, she's being banished from her land. So the match ends inside another scrum. Scrum? What's a scrum? It's a rugby term. I don't know what they call it in stickball. Where Loak is given powers by her ancestors. And when this happens, she sees the same spiral shape that we saw in the creation story. Now, in our last video, we talked about the recurrence of spirals in nature, from the DNA helix to spiral galaxies, and how spirals, especially the golden spiral, are seen as proof of intelligent design. Now, in this episode, that is appropriate, since these spirals are tied to the creation story of the Choctaw people. And then we go to the opening credits. Now, we're not going to break down every element of this, because certain parts of this are going to be more evident with their meaning by the end of the series. So we'll be saving a lot of this for our final breakdown, when we can really point out all the allusions that they're making. But I just want to point out a few things here. One, there is a continual use of shadow puppets. Now, this of course calls back to Maya and Bonnie telling the creation story back in episode 1. And in our last breakdown, I talked about how shadow puppets are some of the earliest forms of cinema, using moving images to tell a story through projected light. But also, shadow puppets tell a story with your hands, just like Maya communicates through sign language. So, all through the credits, we see the recurrence of hands used to tell stories, whether to tell the stories of animals or myths, or just to show Maya pointing a finger gun. And I also love how these credits are in the style of one of the truly great Southern Gothic stories, True Detective Season 1. These credits show how all of these locations and events are layered with subtext, meaning, and especially history. For instance, we see Kingpin with only half his face visible because of Maya shooting out one of his eyes at the end of Hawkeye's finale. And we also see this echo effect on Maya, which has a couple of different meanings. One, it calls back to her comic book name, Echo. In the comics, this is because she has the ability to copy or echo the powers of others. But here, I think it also means that she is a metaphorical echo of her ancestors' powers. And then we go to the present day. Now notice the drawings hanging up in the house. In the show Hawkeye, we saw that Maya has always surrounded herself with artwork, in her room as a child, and even in her apartment in New York. And, just like in her apartment, her childhood home has a silent alarm.
What was that?
I don't know. He struggled to touch the wall.
So then Biscuit shows up, and you know what? I really like this character for a couple reasons. One, His name is Biscuits, and that's one of my favorite foods, but also, I can really relate to him. I'd like to think that if I were in the MCU, that I'd be somebody like Captain America or Spider-Man. But if we're being real, I'd be Biscuits. An ordinary guy selling his PlayStation to fix a borrowed car. He's driving his Grandma Chula's mail truck, and notice how this doesn't say USPS on the truck or the logo, but it does say Rural Mail Carrier. Now, these are post office freelancers in rural areas who drive their own vehicles usually to deliver mail. Although, rural mail carriers do technically use the post office logo, so maybe they didn't use it in the show because the USPS didn't approve of one of their trucks being used to plant a bomb on a train. I also thought it was a nice touch that Biscuits is wearing an Oklahoma University shirt. Their mascot is the Sooner, a white pony, like the Pony Express, an early network for delivering mail. Hey, why is the Sooner going there backwards? Well, it's always backwards on mail trucks, so the driver can be closer to the mailboxes. Oh. See, I don't drive or get the mail or anything like that because I'm just a little dog. I know you are, buddy. So, we go to Scully's pawn shop, and as we pointed out last episode, per Ken Christensen, a writer of the show, Scully is a Choctaw word for money. And then we get the return of the great Graham Greene, who you might remember from this role in The Last of Us.
Why did you shoot him?
The gun's all the way over there.
So Scully is an incredibly smart, capable person, and yet we see him here talking crap to white tourists and gentrifiers. In fact, a lot of literature about modern Native Americans, particularly the stories by the great writer Sherman Alexie, tend to focus on how tribes are now coping with poverty. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, the median income on reservations is $14,000 compared to $41,000 in the rest of the USA. In fact, there's even a sign in the window offering payday loans, which are often used by people who are living in poverty or hand-to-mouth. So that is why we see Scully being forced to take advantage of the gullible, cartoonish white people. Income on reservations is $14,000 compared to $41,000 in the rest of the USA. In fact, there's even a sign in the window offering payday loans, which are often used by people who are living in poverty or hand-to-mouth. So that is why we see Scully being forced to take advantage of the gullible, cartoonish white people. Get it? He's chanting, buy the damn thing, buy the damn thing. The couple says they want to buy a Navajo rug while they're in a store with a Choctaw flag in the window. And this is because they're using the term Navajo, which is an actual Native American tribe, as a kind of brand name, instead of, trying to honor their actual civilization or their artwork. Now, this couple are not interested in, representing or honoring tribal customs. They are there to appropriate those customs for the sake of their own decor.
After you work out, you can feel worn out. Reach for core power and rise to a whole new level of recovery.
Buy the damn thing.
The nutrition you need to power up. Champion your recovery with core power.
Wellness Wincy's dental treats are the best of both. A tasty treat that also helps maintain their oral health. Wincy's are crafted to support the 4 areas vets check most. Wellness Wincy's. Treat them well. Do you have any of those Navajo rugs?
And then Biscuit steps in and says,
Drive over to Anthropology and get your Navajo rug. That's all stuff from Madripoor.
now, Madripoor might sound familiar. It is a fictional country from Marvel. Navajo, which is an actual Native American tribe, as a kind of brand name, instead of, trying to honor their actual civilization or their artwork. Now, this
Buy the damn thing, buy the damn thing. That bitch. Ah. Whoop, 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 whoop. Stupid looking at.
Get it? He's chanting, buy the damn thing, buy the damn thing. The couple says they want to buy a Navajo rug while they're in a store with a Choctaw flag in the window. And this is because they're using the term Navajo, which is an actual Native American tribe, as a kind of brand name, instead of, trying to honor their actual civilization or their artwork. Now, this couple are not interested in, representing or honoring tribal customs. They are there to appropriate those customs for the sake of their own decor. And then this exception says,
drive over to anthropology.
Flipper!
Now, Magic might sound familiar. Biscuit steps in and says,
drive over to anthropology, get your Navajo road, but that's all stuff from Madripoor.
Now, Madripoor might sound familiar. It is a fictional country from Marvel Comics where basically there are no laws. Wolverine used to travel there undercover as the hero called Patch, and now it's probably most famous for appearing in Falcon the Winter Soldier. It's where Zemo did this. God, I love Barry Sam. Really want that character to come back in the MCU. And then we cut to Chula organizing an event or some kind of fair. So this scene does a couple of things. One, it immediately draws a parallel with the opening, when we see the village of the Choctaw people when they were at their height. Now, the tribal leaders can only rebuild a facsimile of that original village, but it can never match the real thing. It can only be an echo of the past.
Oh, so the title of the show has many layered meanings, person. Very good.
Thank you, Doug. So, for instance, she talks about the optimal placement of speakers to replicate the sound of the tribal drums in the opening sequence. After she finds out Maya's back, Chula visits Black Crow's skating rink, set to Casey and JoJo's All My Life, which is ironic in this scene because the lyrics of that song talk about being close to someone, with lyrics like, close to me, you're like my mother, close to me, you're like my sister. But the scene is essentially about Chola essentially cutting ties with Maya and banishing her from this land. Now, from what we see in this episode, Kingpin's operation is deeply embedded within this town, with Henry Black Crow shipping weapons from probably Mexico to New York. So it would be common knowledge that Maya took her dad's place in the Kingpin's organization. But the centerpiece of this episode is this train sequence. One of the best Disney Plus action sequences I have seen since, I guess, the opening of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So this sequence won me over right off the bat when Maya jumps off the bridge all badass, but then misjudges the jump and falls. I love moments like this in my superhero stories, when we get to see superheroes make very human mistakes, like Captain America misjudging his new strength, or Peter face-planting when he was web-slinging. Situations like I love the character Hawkeye so much. Having an ordinary guy amongst all the superhumans reminds us all of how truly awesome their powers are. When Maya counts the guards, the sound design tunes out all of the other sounds to focus on her concentration and her point of view. And notice that she's going after the car called D9X, probably named after Daredevil issue 9, the first appearance of Echo in the comics. Now, when she drills into the car, she uses a red light, and we do keep seeing the occurrence of the color red with Maya, specifically with red representing her life of crime and spreading further bloodshed. When we first saw her in Hawkeye, she was bathed in red light, and this was taking place when she was fully immersed in the Kingpin's operation. So, after she plants the bomb, we get a key moment. She misjudges her jump, crushing her leg in the coupling between cars, and then, just like Loak in the opening, she sees visions of her ancestors, giving her strength. But not just spiritual strength, like literal superpowered strength. Now, we talked about this in our last video, but ancestors are a very important part of Choctaw culture. Now, sometime after their creation myth, the story goes that they traveled to escape a great flood, carrying the bones of their ancestors along with them. But once they found a home, they buried their ancestors in the new land. In the same way, Maya has returned to her roots and is now able to access the spirits of her ancestors. We see the original Choctaw when they were still made of clay, the first Choctaw woman, and then Loak. Now, in the Choctaw creation story, we saw these clay people emerge from pools that contained a spiral of light. And then, years later, these ancestors can call upon this same spiral magic to help Maya, appearing on her palms just like it did for her ancestors. And I just gotta say, I really, really hope they don't do that MCU thing where they explain this to death. This doesn't have to be aliens or like a demon god from another dimension or Whatever. Just let this be an unexplained myth. Let it be magic. Let it be spiritual. Let this universe feel bigger by not explaining every little thing. So she makes sparks in the wheels of the train so Biscuits can find her. Very clever. And then she finally executes a jump correctly, gracefully imitating her stickball playing ancestor from the opening sequence. And then we go to downtown New York City and notice how they keep Avengers Tower out of frame. It always really bothers me when we see the New York City skyline in shows like Hawkeye, and Avengers Tower is not where it's supposed to be.
Yeah, you know, I feel like the idea of like shooting out Avengers Tower was important to fans, but Marvel just kind of forgot about it.
I know, but maybe Avengers Tower was bought by the street-level big bad of the MCU, Wilson Fisk, and he can reside in Fisk Tower like he does in the comics. That would be super cool. And by the way, when you take a closer look at Maya's homemade bomb, you can see that its housing looks like it's made from an LED camping lantern. So, this LED makes an IED. Very clever. After the explosion, Maya goes to Scully to get a replacement leg, and notice he's wearing a shirt that reads, The Natives, but in like the Beatles font. Now this is an actual t-shirt that parodies the Beatles walking across Abbey Road, just with tribal members instead. And also, the flag in the window here is the actual flag of the Choctaw Nation. Maya says she blew up the train car because they hit her first. And I think this must be her talking about the stab wound that she had treated in episode 1. But I think the arc of this series is actually going to be about her moving past this kind of thinking. Maya was filled with rage toward Ronan for killing her father, and then Clint tried to explain to her that that rage was going to destroy her. But instead, she's transferred that anger onto the Kingpin. She is still caught in this cycle of violence, an eye for an eye that could eventually destroy her or her people. Scully MacGyvers her a temporary leg, and then he reminds Maya and the audience about the creation story and her ancestors' heritage.
Jaffa and ancestors would watch out for family in times of need.
Frankly, I'm really glad they changed her powers for the MCU. See, in the comics, she has the ability to copy other people when she sees them, but that would have been too much like the Taskmaster who was already returning to the MCU in the Thunderbolts. Giving her super strength that draws from the power of her ancestors basically makes her into a cool Iron Fist. I also like the little detail that Maya's new leg, creaks a little bit.
Working at Whatever has helped me get stuff ready for my apartment that I'll move into, so I can afford what I need as well as what I want.
The itch and rash of moderate to severe eczema disrupts my skin night and day.
That's a day?
It's setting us up for the reveal of her super shiny new leg that, I don't know, maybe we'll have a machine gun embedded in it like Rose McGowan's in Planet Terror. And then we got back to Biscuits and the total look of abject fear on his face when his grandma sees how much he totaled her truck. And then he accidentally lets it slip to Maya's cousin Bonnie that Maya is back in town. Now remember, Bonnie was Maya's childhood best friend, and here actually she is played by Deborah Jacobs, who also voiced Kahori in What If.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yes, it is. And there's another connection to What If in this scene. The guy who is fixing Biscuit's truck is actually played by another great What If voice actor. This is your mom. Now, back at Maya's house, she's confronted by Black Crow. He tries to make it seem like he needs to choose either her or Fisk, but he's making it clear that he's actually choosing his people first, while Maya is only looking out for herself. It's another reminder for Maya that she has been basically torn apart and separated from her home and her people. Much like the threat to Loak in the opening sequence, she has been metaphorically banished from her homeland. Now this is why she shoots up the swing set where she and Bonnie used to play. The memory of that old tent is a reminder of this being a home where she can never truly belong. So she fires on it to further detach herself from her past. But the spirits of her ancestors are still here, binding her to her home. She can never sever that deeper connection that she has to her people. Now, I do wonder what Scully meant when he said,
"You can never predict when they might come calling."
Like, there is a serious mystery lurking in this show, and I have no idea what happens next. Also, I should mention the jacket she wears in this scene with the sun over her chest is like the uniform that she wore in the comics. So, like, I am very into this show so far. I think that Marvel is slowly building up a street-level universe, with the Kingpin being the new Thanos for the low-powered heroes of New York City. And I'm loving how they're taking what worked from the Netflix series and using that in the MCU. But what I'm really hoping to see here is to see Spider-Man become a part of all this. Like, maybe the show's Echo and Daredevil set up Kingpin as this unstoppable force, and Spider-Man gets drawn into the fight in his new movie. I mean, after all, Tom Holland is now wearing a cloth suit, with no ties to the Avengers or anything high-tech, so that would make him fit in perfectly with the street-level, low-tech branch of the MCU. And by the way, the street-level gang war stories from the 80s Amazing Spider-Man comics are some of my favorite Spider-Man stories of all time, so I really hope that's what they're building toward. Well, guys, that's just what I thought of the episode. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe and smash that bell for alerts. For Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Erie.
Not Ryan Erie. Stupid looking ass.
Echo Episode 3 is filled with layered symbolism and hidden meaning that we're going to break down for you right now. And a little later, I'm going to talk about how this episode is actually connected to What If, and how we might have just met a live-action variant of What If Season 2's Kahori. Hey, welcome back to Screen Crush. I'm Ryan Erie, and these are all the Easter eggs, references, and little things you might have missed in Episode 3 of Echo. Guys, before we get into it, in honor of Echo, Daredevil, and Kingpin, we have created new designs at our merch store, ScreenCrushMerch.com, where we design all the merch ourselves. We have this Nelson and Murdoch shirt with the vigilante holding the scales of justice, this Nelson and Murdoch Law and Order tee, the Return of the King, which speaks for itself, and Doug as Daredevil. And we have our very first Screen Crush live show on February 22nd in Brooklyn, New York. The link for tickets is below. You can meet the team, see exclusive videos. It's going to be a great time. So guys, thanks for supporting our channel. Thanks for watching. Links are below. Let's get started. The episode opens in the style of an old silent western. All dialogue and sound effects are shown as text on screen on cards that are called enter titles. And I thought that it was a nice touch for them to go with this silent film stylization to tell this story about Maya's ancestors, because Maya is hearing impaired. Also notice that on these intertitle cards, a sun appears at the top. This is Echo's logo in the comics, and it appears on stylization to tell this story with silent western. All dialogue and sound effects are shown as text on screen on cards that are... Thanks for supporting our channel. Thanks for watching. Links are below. Let's get started. The episode opens in the style of an old silent western. All dialogue and sound effects are shown as text on screen on cards that are called enter titles. And I thought that it was a nice touch for them to go with this silent film stylization to tell this story about Maya's ancestors, because Maya is hearing impaired. Also notice that on these intertitle cards, a sun appears at the top. This is Echo's logo in the comics, and it appears on Maya's jacket, and we'll talk about what it means a little bit later in the video. So here we're introduced to a collective of native police called the Light Horsemen. The most famous light horse companies were the Choctaw, which was Maya's tribe, as well as the Cherokee, Chickasaw, Creek, and Seminole tribes. So in this flashback, we meet an ancestor of Maya's called Tuklo. Now, like Maya, she bucks the trends of a traditional female role and seeks to be a warrior for peace. We even get this great line that reads, "They will see me, not as they think I should be, they will see me as I am," which reminded me of this line from Thor in Avengers Endgame.
It's time for me to be who I am rather than who I'm supposed to be.
Now, we've talked about that Thor line before and how it connects to Loki and the overall theme of the multiverse saga, with themes such as destiny, free will, and purpose.
I know what kind of god I need to be.
Oh, no. No. Oh, what's wrong with you? New Year's big party.
What a new... Backed with a 100% money... Now back to what I was saying. Now here, Tuklo's hand begins to glow, like we saw Maya's hand glow in the previous episode. And then we see the spiral symbol in the water in front of her. The same symbol we saw in the waters from the first episode. Now, this scene is in black and white, so we're not really sure what color the symbol is putting off, but my guess is that it's going to be blue, the same color it was in that opening scene of the series. One of the many interpretations of this ancient spiral symbol is that of eternal life, which could be tied to the Sky World from the Kahori episode of What If. In that universe, the Tesseract made its way to Earth following an earlier destruction of Asgard. The Tesseract, which contained the Space Stone, landed in North America in the 1400s. The Space Stone energy then spread throughout what is called the Forbidden Lake, and within these waters it created a portal to a parallel reality called the Sky World. Many natives found their way to the Sky World, which was essentially paradise. They all now developed superpowers such as super speed, strength, and telekinesis. It's also here that they were granted eternal life. Now, when the Spaniards invaded North America, they were searching for the Fountain of Youth, or a fountain of eternal life. And in this series, we actually see Maya's ancestors living on forever through her, another form of eternal life. And there could be an even more overt connection to What If that we're going to talk about in just a bit. Now, when this episode first started, I thought that we were seeing like an actual original film, like the Bass Reeves silent movie that opened up HBO's The Watchmen. But this isn't really meant to be a silent film. It's meant to evoke the way a silent film feels. Notice, for example, how we can still hear the sounds of water in the stream. This is because the water is what activated Tuplo's powers through the spirits of her ancestors. And if the film is silent to symbolize Maya's disability in the present day, then the reason we can hear the water is it's because the water represents magic, which transcends the physical world and becomes something that Maya can feel in her soul. Now, Maya's father doesn't want her to be a warrior, saying that women are life givers and not life takers, so she pulls a Mulan and disguises herself as a man. And in our last episode breakdown, we talked about how Maya is repeating the history of her ancestor Loak, and now she's doing the same for Tuplo. Maya's father didn't want a violent gangster life for her, but she was led into that life by Fisk. And then, once she becomes a warrior, the aspect ratio shifts, going from 4:3 into 16:9. And we saw this in the opening last episode, going from the normal 16 more 4:3:1 aspect ratio.
That is cinema.
When we cut back to modern day, we see Maya's grandmother, Chola, on a security camera. This security footage is also in boxed black and white format, paralleling the style of the silent film about Tuplo. Theory about this. And by the way, I know all these episodes dropped at once, but we're only watching them one at a time, making these videos one at a time. So by the time I finish this sentence, all of you will have known probably if this theory is right or not, but I don't care, we're going to say it anyways.
You can't stop me!
This makes us think this could be a hint that Tuplo and Chula are the same.
Nope.
All of you will have known probably if this theory is right or not, but I don't care, we're going to say it anyways.
You can't stop me!
This makes us think this could be a hint that Tuplo and Chula are the same person, or that Tuplo is actually Chula's mother.
But that Tuplo character was alive way back in the 1800s. How could she be alive now? Is that how human years work? Person, are you a million in human years?
No, buddy, you're right, that if Tuplo aged normally, she'd be like long dead by now. And even if she had a daughter, she'd probably be dead by now too. But when you factor in the spiral of eternal life and the sky world of eternal life, plus its connection to Maya's heritage and newfound powers, I could see us learning that perhaps Chola has been around a really long time.
117.
I doubt it.
And that perhaps she only started aging again once she left somewhere similar to the sky world that we saw in What If. And on top of that, Chola's granddaughter and Maya's cousin Bonnie is played by the same actress that voices Kahori.
What happened to the truck? Onde Dirty was that? Akwai Zorda already Dirty.
So I'm wondering if we're going to find out that Bonnie is actually this universe's Kahori. And perhaps we could learn that the Tesseract did have something to do with the power set that we're seeing Maya and her ancestors possess.
No.
Now, I got a little confused in the first 2 episodes about their family tree, and now it's been all cleared up. Chola had 2 daughters, Maya's mother and Bonnie's mother. After Bonnie's mother died, Chola raised her, and she was dating Scully. Scully's not her grandfather. So, in our first episode breakdown, I said that Chola was her aunt, and well... And also knowing that Chola lost her daughter is a crucial bit of backstory. Now we know that her life has been tainted by the loss of both her daughters. And now she is afraid of any kind of evil that would visit her family and make her suffer more loss. She blamed Maya's father for the loss of Maya's mom. And now she's afraid that Maya is going to be the one to hurt her family even more. And in this episode, her fears are kind of validated, like Bonnie gets a gun pointed to her head several times simply because Maya returned to town. Also, notice behind Scully here, there's a stack of Chilton's auto manuals. Now these are do-it-yourself guides to fixing almost any car that you can think of. So, it makes sense that Scully, the guy who can basically fix anything, would have a lot of these manuals in his shop. Really nice set dressing by the production team. Well done, guys. Anyways, as Maya is walking by this water, we see her begin to have flashbacks of her ancestors. She first sees Chafa in both her human form and her clay form. Now, Chafa is the character from the first episode that we saw when Maya and Bonnie were talking about the first Choctaw people. She then sees the blue spiral and the biskinetic bird that we've talked about previously. The same bird that Chafa saw and the same bird that Chola saw in the first episode. We then see Tuplo in black and white, and then a shot of Maya's mother after her car wreck. Now here we begin to see what looks like water being poured on a pregnant woman's stomach, and then we see that same woman lying down in what looks like a white gown. Now I'm not exactly sure who is giving birth here, but it's once again giving us imagery of lineage. In fact, it wouldn't surprise me if this was actually Chola. We then get this shot of Tuplo screaming with this look of terror on her face, like something awful has happened. Or maybe she's just trying to warn Maya that something terrible is about to happen. And then Maya gets kidnapped by Dumb, Dumber, and Dumbest. The 3 bozos are trying to get that big reward for Maya's capture as the woman who killed the Kingpin. Now the ringleader here, Vicky, is played by Thomas Sullivan, who has appeared in the MCU before as young Nathaniel Malick in the final season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Maya wakes up hanging upside down, symbolic of how her world is about to be turned upside down, and then her bad leg actually gets her out of this fix.
MJ. I'm sorry.
Now, for a moment, we shifted to her point of view, not being able to hear her kidnappers. And I think that this is a great touch this series keeps adding in. A lot of the time in movies and TV shows, hearing impaired people are portrayed as just kind of like magical lip readers who don't even need to be looking at someone's lips to understand them. And then Bonnie arrives and gets grabbed from behind, which also just happened to Maya, so the grab comes off as a little predictable and a little unimaginative. But there are some directing choices later in the episode that are pretty great, which I'm going to point out to you very soon. Now, I will say that if the point of this episode was to portray these kidnappers as idiots, then mission accomplished. They have their hostages just out in the open in full view of the window. Then they leave Maya untied in the back room. And then Vicky went and got himself shot.
How about let's all go out and you show me that money?
Maya and Bonnie are reunited for the first time in years, and Bonnie expresses how hurt she is that Maya hasn't talked to her in so long, not responding to texts, emails, nothing. Now, I like this scene because it showed us how Maya took on the personality that we see a lot of vigilantes burdened with, the life of a loner, pushing everyone away because they don't want to hurt the ones they love. And the best way to do that is to pretend like they don't love them at all. This goes back to the flashback of Loak in episode 2, who is going to be banished to exile if she didn't win the stickball game. In the same way, Maya has been emotionally exiled from her home. And as we see later in this episode, Maya continues to face the same obstacles as her ancestors, and she is also able to learn from their life experiences. And I love getting to see Maya's kick-ass boot knife. As Professor X taught us in Logan, female hunters such as lions tend to use their back claws.
She uses her front claws for hunting and the back claws defensive, Maya.
So this parallels perfectly with Echo's path as a female warrior and hunter, just like her ancestor before her, but also her desire to lead, just like Chafa.
Well, you two are exactly alike.
So, when Zane texts Vicky, notice that it's from the Manhattan area code 212. So here's a fun Easter egg. I actually called this number, and when you call, it turns out that it actually belongs to your mom. When Vicky gets shot by Zane, it gives us this great reminder that this show is TVMA, going back to the bloody violence we were used to getting in shows like Daredevil and The Punisher. It still kind of caught me off guard since this is part of the very PG-13 MCU. Now, while Maya is working on her escape, her kidnapper just happens to be watching a video about how to escape being kidnapped when you're taken hostage. And if you listen, you'll hear that this video was posted by a channel called Militia Mommies. This is the second time militias have been mentioned in this show.
You know, this militia takes Ryan.
When Maya gets done constructing her weapon from skating parts, she begins her ambush on Zane and his men. We hear Rob Zombie's Dragula begin to play really loud. So I thought it was a nice touch that Maya used something like really loud music to weaken her enemy while it won't bother her in the slightest. She's using her deafness as a strength, similar to what we've seen Daredevil do in the past, when he'll turn off the lights in the building to place him on equal footing with his enemies. Now this song is one of many perfect needle drops in this episode, with lyrics about prey who have now become the hunter. For instance, Dead I Am the Rat, Feast upon the Cat.
Oh, I get it. So Maya was the rat, but she is now feasting upon the cats.
Exactly. On this sign here, we can see the Choctaw word for warrior, a recurring theme throughout this episode. As Maya fights Zane's men, we see flashes of Tuklo's fight from earlier in the episode, further mirroring the connection between the two characters and their self-paved path to being warriors. During the fight, the rink is bathed in red light, part of the show's motif of using red lighting to signify when Maya is killing. This time, she's home alone in a laser tag arena, which was awesome. This whole sequence was just great. This is what I wanted to see in Secret Invasion, right? In that scene when an army of shapeshifters invaded Nick Fury's home. A little subterfuge, a little fun, a little bit of the old ultra-violence. And here, we get a Western pinball game called Legends of the Coyote, sticking with the Western theme of Tuklo's introduction. Now, Maya is slammed down onto the game, cracking the glass, and this could be meant to symbolize the close bond between the two characters and how the boundary of time between them is being shattered via Maya's visions. And the broken glass could also be meant as a reference to the breaking the glass ceiling metaphor, often associated with women breaking through the barrier of systematic misogyny. During this fight, there are 3 separate shots of the arcade machines filmed from above to show how repeatedly Maya is the underdog in this fight.
Yeah, or they just rigged it up one time and they liked how it looked and they kept going.
Yes, could also be that. Finally, she rips the cable from a shooting game called The Quick and the Undead, a reference to the Western The Quick and the Dead, featuring a female gunslinger played by Sharon Stone. Maya kicks a lot of acid. Oh my god, this fight choreography was just awesome. It really brought me back to the days of scenes like this from the Marvel Netflix series. When Maya gets done mopping the floor with the henchman, she ends up getting restrained because Zane has Bonnie at gunpoint. And, just as Zane is about to seemingly execute Maya, Bonnie, and Henry, we hear Zane's phone begin to ring. Now the song there is New York Minute by Don Henley, the perfect ringtone for the Kingpin.
Oh, good grief.
Did that guy just talk to me?
Yes! I love those little guys.
When Henry suggests to Maya that it had to be the Kingpin who called off Zane, Maya says that she shot him in the face, which of course we saw her do in the finale of Hawkeye. Now, in the comics, Kingpin is blinded in both eyes, but in this series it would appear that he was only shot in the one eye, and trailer footage would suggest that he gets that eye back later in the season. And you know what? Since Kingpin's introduction to the MCU proper, we have seen him rip off a car door and get hit by a big SUV and survive, meaning that he has likely been enhanced through super soldier serum or like something similar. But I'm very curious to learn how he walked away from Maya shooting him point blank in the face. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm kind of excited they juiced him up a little for the MCU. I mean, maybe we'll get to see him trade blows with Spider-Man like we talked about in our episodes 1 and 2 breakdown videos. Afterwards, Maya gets a new prosthetic leg from Scully, and on it we can see this Choctaw sun symbol that I referenced earlier. Now, this symbol means continuous happiness throughout all stages of life. This could also be meant to symbolize the connection between the lives of Maya and her ancestors and the power that binds them. We also learned that Maya's grandmother left her house as it was, like a museum. Now, Chola is the caretaker of her people's past. She can hear the old spirits, so it makes sense that she would preserve Maya's life exactly as she left it in the 2000s. And this is where we can hear the song When We Remain by Samantha Crane, a Choctaw Nation songwriter. The song's lyrics are about persevering throughout persecution and genocide, with lyrics like, when we remain, we will not be like the beautiful bones of a forgotten city. We have woven ourselves into the cloth of the earth, we have mixed our breath into the expanding sky. And the next song is even more appropriate. It is a Choctaw translation of the hymn Watchmen Tell Us of the Night. Now, the hymn was taken from the Choctaw Hymn Book, a famous collection of hymns translated into the Choctaw language, first published in 1872 and still used to this day. This particular hymn's lyrics have a very long history, written by John Bowring and inspired by the book of Isaiah. Now, in the Bible, this passage was about the suffering of the people of Judah. As the Watchman says, the morning cometh and also the night. There's a lot more to it than that, but that's what you need to know for the context of this show. Essentially, this song is also about the perseverance of a persecuted people, and it reassures those people that there will be divine influence someday to save them from their strife. And then, we get the return of the king. The big man himself has come to Oklahoma to confront Maya for the first time following their big fallout in Hawkeye. And man, oh God, what a jump scare.
Right though, man.
Like, I love how Fisk is just this unkillable, unstoppable force. He's like the Michael Myers of crime.
Yeah, but he shot him in the face, dude.
Yes, so like it looks like Kingpin and Maya both essentially have superpowers now. So I'm pretty sure we're going to get to see a pretty badass fight between these two. But I do have to say, I really hope that nothing in this series gets too fantastical. My favorite thing about Kingpin and Daredevil and even Echo is their hand-to-hand combat and the grounded feeling of their corner of the MCU. So I really hope this season does not end with some CGI-heavy scene where Echo is shooting energy blasts from the palm of her hands to take down the Kingpin in some flashy third-act battle. I want to see them really duke it out. So the final song of the credits is called Feral Love by Chelsea Wolfe, a song with lyrics about escaping from your heartache by becoming like an animal, just like how Maya escaped the pain of her father's death by becoming a killer for Fisk. Well, guys, big shout out to the writer of this video.
I'm really addicted to these racetrack featurings, bro. I ain't gonna lie.
Those are the Easter eggs that we caught in this episode of Echo. Let me know if you missed any down in the comments below.
I can feel it.
Twitter. If it's your first time here, please subscribe and smash that bell for alerts. For Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Airy.
I can feel it. I feel it. I can feel it.
Your hair by Old Spice. The finest, one of a kind. Best and only accessory you'll ever need. Grows on your head. Old Spice has hair products.
No, Old Spice with hair product.
To be free. To move forward in my life.
Echo Episode 4 is loaded with Marvel Easter eggs and symbolism, and it oh so subtly paints Wilson Fisk as a colonizer trying to separate Maya from her people. Welcome back to Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Airy, and this is all the Easter eggs, references, and little things you might have missed in Episode 4 of Echo to Loa. We're going to break this whole episode down for you, but mostly I am excited to break down Vincent D'Onofrio's brilliant portrayal of Wilson Fisk and how this show connects back to Daredevil, Born Again, and the future of the MCU. And in honor of the Kingpin's return, we have designed this Return of the King shirt for sale right now in our merch merch store, ScreenCrushMerch.com, where we design all the merch ourselves. We also have this Nelson and Murdoch shirt with a vigilante holding the scales of justice, this Nelson and Murdoch Law and Order parody tee, Echo in sign language, and of course, Doug as Daredevil. And guys, we also have our very first Screen Crush live show on February 22nd in Brooklyn, New York. Link for the tickets is below. You can meet the team, see exclusive videos. It's going to be a great time. Now, the title of this episode has a special meaning. Toloa is the name of Maya's mother, and her name means to sing. So every episode of this series is named after one of Maya's ancestors.
Yeah, that's why I picked out.
Chafa and the Choctaw creation story, then Loak being threatened with exile, followed by Tupelo wanting to become a light horse warrior like the men. And the final episode of the series is going to be titled Maya, because all of these women and their struggles have been leading up to Maya's story and adding their strength to her. So each of these women's stories parallels Maya's in these episodes. The creation episode was Maya's origin story. Loak was threatened with exile as Maya's grandmother had exiled her. And of course, both she and Tupelo fight as warriors. And in this episode, we see how her grandmother actually struggled to bring her mother into this world. And later, she talks about how her mother's death ended up shattering their family. But Maya also finds out that her mother was a healer, so now it is up to her to heal these family bonds that were broken years ago. Now, this episode may not be as action-packed, but it is loaded with personal drama. Wilson Fisk wants to separate Maya from her family once and for all.
Wait, what do you mean by that?
Well, like he told her in Hawkeye.
You and I were family.
He's trying to supplant her family and become the only family she has. And in this episode, we see that. We see that Fisk's true threat is that he can divide Maya from her actual family, from the tribe of people who really love her.
But he says that he loves her.
And I think he probably does think that he loves her, but Fisk only ever wants people in his life who make him feel better. Like Vanessa.
Oh yeah, who's Vanessa again?
Look, if you want to know about Vanessa, we have a recap of everything about Wilson Fisk and Daredevil you need to know before this show. It's up on the channel right now. Check it out. And Fisk also collects people that he just thinks would be useful. I mean, probably the real reason he's been conditioning Maya for years is because he's looking for a secret weapon to use against Daredevil. And I think we're going to see the repercussions of this show in Daredevil born again.
Hey, by the way, person, how come you're wearing glasses today?
Ah, you like them? Well, check this out. Huh?
Whoa, how did you change your glasses, sir?
Click our link in the description and use our code. You will not regret it. These things are awesome. All right, now back to Echo. In this episode, under the Marvel Spotlight logo, we hear the sounds of New York City, 2006, 1 year after Maya and her father moved to the city. Now, we have seen in previous flashbacks that her Uncle Wilson visited her at karate practice, so probably at this point, he's already just taken a shine to little Maya. But this is the moment when he truly begins to care for her in his own bored way. Maya gets bored by a street vendor. Now, in the Netflix Daredevil series, nothing would make Kingpin lose his temper more than when people hurt his beloved Vanessa. He decapitated a guy with a car door just because he embarrassed him in front of his date. And now we see him being equally defensive of Maya. I mean, seriously, this is terrifying. And look, even though the Kingpin is the bank, even though he has everything to lose by getting caught murdering a guy in broad daylight, he beats this guy to death simply because he wants to. It's really great to see down because this is actually one of the most important moments in Maya's life. Kingpin is wearing his white suit and it gets tainted with red blood. And what does he immediately ask for?
Need a new jacket.
Because he doesn't want Maya to see him this way. In the show Daredevil, the Kingpin was such a compelling villain because he was obsessed with purity. He wanted to make the city clean, to make it pure. And this is one of the reasons he was obsessed with the painting Rabbit in a Snowstorm. It reminded him of purity, of that wall he would stare at as a child that I'm going to explain later. But in the Daredevil finale, that same painting was tainted with red blood, just like Wilson's dream of a pure New York was tainted by his own violent actions, and just like how his suit is stained with blood right here. Now, his first instinct is to hide this violent self away from Maya, to keep her innocent and pure. In the Daredevil series, he initially had the same instinct regarding Vanessa. But when Maya sees him, she's not afraid of him. She joins him. And at this moment, Fisk recognizes her as a kindred spirit, someone else who also faced childhood trauma and who finds comfort in violence. I mean, the real reason Kingpin loves Maya is because she makes him feel like he's not alone, that there are other people in the world who take pleasure in violence and hurting people. And then we cut to 2021 during the blip. Now, this is after Ronan kills her father, and I'm pretty sure this is before he sends her on that first mission that we saw back in episode 1.
You're ready to move from the theoretical to the practical.
So there's a few things to notice in this scene. One, look at Maya's jacket. It looks like the same one her father was wearing when they left Oklahoma in 2007. It could be that she's wearing his clothes to remember him, but it's a subtle way to show that she has not let go of his death. Also, Fisk has a painting hanging above Maya of an American flag, with these like layered images of a hammer and machines, much like the layered effects of the opening credits. But a few things to note about this painting. One, the hammer is foreshadowing the one that he gives her later in the episode, which, believe me, we're going to talk about in a bit. And two, the entire episode is casting Wilson Fisk as a white colonizer who is trying to separate Maya from her heritage and homeland and family. In the 1800s, this was the same role that many American soldiers played when they drove the Choctaw Nation from their ancestral lands, hence the appearance of the American flag.
What do you mean?
Well, Fisk is trying to become Maya's new family, and he wants her to come back with him to New York. In other words, he wants her to leave behind her heritage and relocate to a place that he chooses. Not only that, but he also wants her to conform to his way of communication. Instead of learning how to sign, he forces her to use technology so it's easier for him to communicate with her. This is similar to how some white settlers and missionaries would force natives to learn new languages, and basically force them to change where they lived, how they lived, their entire way of life. But I gotta say, just about Echo's contacts, going forward, they are going to make it easier for her to team up with heroes like Daredevil and Spider-Man and other heroes who may not know sign language. It's like a sci-fi narrative shortcut that's probably going to stick around past the events of this show.
Do you understand me? Is my universal translator working?
Hey, I got a question. Why did they kill that really nice lady?
Oh, yeah, that was hard, wasn't it? Notice how they had already strung up this plastic to hide the evidence, and they killed her right around the corner because they knew that Maya couldn't hear her screams. It's the kind of cold and efficient killing you would expect from Wilson Fisk. And to answer your question, they would have killed her because she is a potential witness to crimes that Wilson and Maya may have discussed. So, back to the present day, where Fisk shows up wanting to have a nice Sunday dinner like they used to. And then we see that she did not shoot his eye out, she only grazed him and gave him a really bad scar. Or, look, maybe like we've been theorizing, maybe Fisk does have a little bit of that Power Broker Super Soldier serum in him, and that makes him a really fast healer. Maya says that she used to see him as a hero, and like I said earlier, Wilson sees himself as a hero who sacrifices his own soul to save his city.
I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future.
Now, earlier I talked about how Maya is drawing from the experience of her ancestors in the present day. And there's an interesting little camera trick in this scene when we see her POV shots. The edge of the lens is a bit distorted, like we're looking through a fisheye lens. This is the same effect used during Loak's stickball game in episode 2. In a way, the game is reflected in this scene. Maya is playing a game with Wilson Fisk, trying to escape from under his control, just like freeing the ball in that game of stickball we saw in episode 2. She pours out the wine and instead gets a Shasta Cola, probably the worst soda of all time. Now, this gesture pays off later on when her grandma gets her a pop. What's pop? It's what we call soda in the Midwest. And the fact that her grandmother offers Maya a drink that she actually wants, while the Kingpin offers her a drink that he wants her to have, that goes back to that theme I talked about of Fisk trying to control her while her family simply accepts her. He also brings her Levain cookies made in a famous bakery in New York. And I gotta tell you, the cookies are good, but a little overrated. The double chocolates are good though.
I can't have the chocolate ones because I will die.
It's true. Now, several times in this scene, we think the Kingpin is going to kill Maya or seek to take revenge. Like when these goons hold open her eyes, I thought that he was literally going to try to take an eye for an eye. But then he offers her the knife because he doesn't want to kill her. He wants to control her. He wants her to submit so she can be his heir and eventually help him take down Daredevil. Now, rumor has it that the plot of Daredevil Born Again would have had Wilson Fisk running for mayor. So it would make sense if he wanted Maya to take over all his criminal operations so he could be clean for public perception. So this offer seems like a good deal for Maya until later when Black Crow tells her that Fisk killed or threatened everyone he loved just to keep controlling him. Yeah. After Fisk had Maya's father killed, he sent Black Crow back to Oklahoma. And like Maya says later on, this was to further isolate her from her family so she would be easier to control. And then we cut to the Choctaw Nation powwow that Chola was planning a couple episodes ago. Now, in our episode 2 breakdown, I pointed out that the festival was meant to parallel the great Choctaw stickball match that opened up that episode. This showed how far the people have fallen.
Racetrack breakfast made fresh in store. They're the breakfast sandwiches you adore. Fluffy eggs and melted cheese stacked. Bacon and sausage get your day on track. Breakfast sandwiches, they're the only way. Get 2 for $5 every day.
Yeah, that tracks.
And here Choctaw are a far cry from their pre-colonial heights. And then Chola gets visions of her ancestors at the same time as Maya, sending Maya into a trance-like state. And I should note that this looks like Maya is having a seizure, and in many ancient cultures, epilepsy was believed to be a kind of holy affliction that would bring someone closer to God, similar to how Maya's trance brings her divine visions of her ancestors. She sees several flashes of her grandmother giving birth, looking at a spiral in the ceiling that's a reflection of the pool in the Choctaw creation myth. Because remember, as we're seeing Maya see these visions, we're also seeing her ancestors having visions as well. For instance, in Tuklo's vision of the pool, she is framed the exact same way as Chafa, the first Choctaw, over the shoulder and looking into the spiral of water. This is connecting all of these women and their experiences. They each had a moment when they connected with their ancestors, or they peered into the ancestral plane. I should also mention that a trance-like state to see one's ancestors was also something we saw in Black Panther. They enter a kind of trance where they can speak to their loved ones from the past. And then her grandmother confirms that all these visions are triggered by life or death situations. So in the creation myth, we also see the cave collapsing just before Chafa led her people out into the sun. And we broke down that myth in our episode 1 Easter egg video. Check it out if you haven't already. So Chola explains all of this ancestry connection to her granddaughter and tells her that in order for her mother's birth to succeed, she had to be in the woods among her sisters. And this is tying back to the series idea of strength through family. Like, in the very first scene of this show, Maya tells Bonnie that she considers her to be her sister. And, as this episode is showing, being close to her family is what gives Maya her real strength, while being close to Kingpin actually weakens her spirit. And then Cholo spells out the theme of this show.
Generations.
By the way, we called that subtext like 2 episodes ago. After Maya leaves, her grandmother goes to look at some clothes that she is tailoring. Now, my guess is that she was originally creating an outfit for Maya's mother, but then she stopped after her mother passed away.
Why do you think that?
Well, last episode, Scully told Maya that her grandmother didn't touch the old house after her father took her away. Instead, her grandmother held onto the past, preserving it almost like a museum. And she tells Maya in this episode that she reminds her so much of her mother. So it looks like her grandmother is making her a superhero outfit, and I just think it would be very appropriate and touching if these were clothes that she was originally making for her mom, but now she's augmenting with these armor pieces I'll talk about later on. And while on the subject, the clothes have a circular sun symbol, which Maya wears on her jacket and on her shirt in this episode, and we see her use this in the comics. This is a modification of the Choctaw sun symbol. This symbol means continuous happiness through all stages of life. So this symbolizes the connection between the lives of Maya and her ancestors and this power that binds them all. Alright, so later in the episode, we do see her grandmother creating what looks like armor for her, at least like shoulder pads and knee pads.
Yeah, why is she suddenly making her armor?
Well, maybe when she saw the visions of Tuklo as a warrior, she understood that this was Maya's new path. Now, I gotta say, there's a really cool tradition of mothers making superhero costumes for their kids. So a lot of you might have watched this and thought of Ms. Marvel, but really, this tradition goes all the way back to Superman, when Martha Kent made his suit from the clothes he was wrapped in as a baby.
Hey, Dad.
Costume.
Thanks. My mom made it for me.
And then Alison Krauss's beautiful song Down on the River to Pray starts to play, a song made famous for its inclusion in the movie Oh Brother Where Art Thou. Now in that movie, the song is being sung by churchgoers about to be baptized.
The preacher done washed away all my sins and transgressions.
And the lyrics are about people seeking spiritual fulfillment, exactly what Maya is looking for in this episode. And then we briefly go to Biscuits and the car mechanic on this beautiful magic hour shot of a junkyard. The mechanic says,
Everything in life touches is yours.
which, as Biscuit points out, is from this.
Is that from Lion King?
It's kind of lame to just call it out that reference.
Yeah, right? I mean, just like say it and let it sit there, you know? Let us enjoy the Easter egg.
But this is not just a throwaway Easter egg. As a friend of the channel, Mike Mazzella, pointed out, much like Simba, Maya has to defeat her evil uncle who has a scar on his eye. Then there's a montage of the other people.
I didn't even notice that.
Sad and off in the distance. And look, I gotta tell you, I have really enjoyed this show, especially the first couple episodes. It has been, extraordinary in some places. But this is one of those times when I really think we should have had more episodes. This has been the weakness of a lot of Marvel shows. They're just, really quick movies, they're one-off, and we don't get a chance to really dive into these characters.
What do you mean?
Well, we don't really know any of these people. Henry Blackcrow just told us a lot about his life, but we're not ever shown anything. We don't know if he has a wife or kids or if he's ever even been in love. Because the show is so short, we've had a lot of characters telling us things instead of a show that actually just gets to tell us stories.
Well, you don't really have to do that all that. It's going to be a episode of flashbacks?
Maya goes to the Kingpin's hotel to finish him off for good. And this is where she calls him out for basically being a colonizer.
That don't make no sense, real shit.
Destination, but the journey.
They don't have to do that.
Get 2 of these.
Because once they do that shit, once people gonna expect it every time, and there's gonna be moments where you don't have to do that shit every fucking time. So they being smart doing this shit. I didn't mind it. I think this was the only show that I didn't mind. It has 5 episodes. It was supposed to be 6, but I didn't mind the 5.
But then, this is so good. He cuts to the core of his own psychosis.
I know now that I failed you. The same as my father failed me.
What's he mean by that?
Well, in one episode of Daredevil, we see Wilson Fisk as a child. His dad, like he says here, was an abusive man, but he also wanted Wilson to grow up to be an abusive man.
You gotta show him that you're a man. Kick him.
And he would make Wilson stare at this white wall while he beat his mother in the next room. So this was the root of Wilson's obsession with achieving purity while also blinding innocence from his violence. In that flashback, he ends up killing his dad with the same hammer we see here, the hammer that he also used to post campaign signs for his dad's failed bid for city council. So this tool that symbolized his father's lack of success actually
is a different hammer.
His first step to success, his first step to achieving control.
Hey, Ryan?
Yeah, Colton. Oh, by the way, Colton's the guy who's trapped eternally in our television set but doesn't know it. What is it?
Well, actually, it's not the same hammer. You see, that's a ball-peen hammer, and in the flashbacks we saw in Daredevil, Fisk killed his dad with a claw hammer, like this.
Wait, why do you even have that?
Don't worry about it. Now, this could just be a continuity error, or maybe a little hint that this isn't the exact same universe from before, but my guess is that Kingpin didn't actually keep the hammer all these years, and he probably disposed of it like you would any murder weapon. Now, I'm guessing that Kingpin probably asked one of his guys to just run out and get him a hammer so that he could pretend as if he kept the hammer all these years and then use it as a prop in his bid for Maya. So, with the hammers being different, I think that means that this was likely just another form of control and manipulation by Kingpin to Maya.
Okay, fine. But what's important here is that when he offers this information to Maya, he is sharing the most intimate part of himself. Because if Maya is violent, like him, then he knows that he is not a monster, that he is not alone. It's a little bit like Palpatine offering Luke a lightsaber to strike him down in Jedi. By offering Maya this power, if she takes it, she proves that she is like him. And if she doesn't take it, then it means that she wants to be his heir. I should also point out, not the first time we've seen a father figure in the MCU offer a potential heir a hammer. As Odin said in the first Thor movie,
It's a weapon to destroy, or is a tool to build?
in the same way, Wilson is telling her, you could use this hammer to destroy me, or you can use it to help build an empire with me. But also, when the Kingpin admits that he has become like his father, he is confirming his worst fear, that he has grown up to be a violent sociopath like his dad. See, for decades, he wore his dad's old cufflinks specifically to prove the opposite to himself.
That's why I still wear these. To remind myself that I'm not cruel for the sake of cruelty.
But now, after years as the Kingpin of crime, he admits that he will always see himself as a monster. And he needs Maya to tell him that he's not a monster because she loves him. And then she'll help him kill Daredevil. Exactly. And finally, he tells her to come home to New York. Again, this is the push-pull between Maya's actual home with her tribe in Oklahoma and her fake home with Kingpin's empire in New York City. Maya goes through several flashbacks, including the only sign that Kingpin ever learned.
Well, so he did learn sign language.
Yeah, but it's like the easiest sign to learn, the one they teach you in kindergarten. But the final image Maya sees here is of her mother. Her mother's death is what sent her on this journey. That was the event that broke her home and sent her into the arms of a false family, Kingpin's empire. But by returning to Oklahoma, Maya
I forgot to put this bitch on charge.
a spiritual link with her mother and her ancestors. And this is what will finally allow her to break the cycle of violence that originally killed her mother. The episode ends with Fisk losing his temper, followed by a cut to black. Now, I kind of think he's going to take off the kid gloves and go for revenge now. But episode 5's been out for a few days, so I'm not going to go into theories too much. Instead, let me know what you thought of the episode and the series as a whole down in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe and smash that bell for alerts. For Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Airy.
Hit him with it. Hit him with it. Hit him with it. I saw. Hit him with it. I don't want to play games. I don't want to play no games. I don't want to play.
The Echo series laid some groundwork for the MCU's Daredevil Born Again and the Kingpin's big run for mayor. We are so excited about it. In a little bit, we're going to talk about if the MCU just turned Echo into a mutant. Hey, welcome back to Screen Crush. I'm Ryan Airy, and this is all the Easter eggs, references, and little
That's what it is.
The final episode of Echo. And guys, in honor of the Kingpin's return and his larger role in the MCU, we have designed this new Return of the King t-shirt for sale now.
What you want to say? What you want to do? What you want to say? What you want to do? How you want to do it? What you want to do? How you want to do it? What you want to do it? Just tell me, or just do it. Just tell me, just do it.
Thank you. And we have our very first Screen Crush live show on February 22nd in Brooklyn, New York. Links for tickets is below. You can meet the team, see exclusive videos. It's going to be a great time. Like I said, links are below. Let's break this episode down. So the episode kicks off with drums, just like in episode 2, teasing another flashback to Maya's ancestors, but actually it's modern day. This shows us that the lineage of Maya that we've been following all season long via flashbacks to her ancestors has now caught up, and Maya is part of that legacy. In fact, every episode of the series was titled after a different ancestor's name until we get to the finale, which is finally called Maya. Now here we can see the same body of water from episode 3, when Maya had her visions of her ancestors. We see the biscominic bird that we've seen many times throughout the season, and it's clear that the bird was meant to serve as a warning sign. In this scene, the bird is there to warn of Maya's violent impulses when Maya shoots the bird with a slingshot. The same violent impulses that would be taken advantage of by Kingpin in the future. After Maya hits the bird with her slingshot, she takes it to her mother. Now Maya's mother tells her that she shouldn't harm living things, similar to what their ancestor Tukla was told by her father.
What you want to do?
Emergency. My girlfriend, we got kidnapped.
You know where she is?
I didn't do anything. Yeah, you did.
She's alive.
1, 2.
She looks more like a suspect. She mad? No, she's cheating.
Maybe this is about revenge.
Fight zip ties and a blow up dog.
Something else has happened here.
Did we all get this wrong?
Next we see Maya's mother use her powers to heal the bird. And look, this was cool, but I'm not crazy about everyone having to have superpowers, especially a character like Echo, who is a total badass in her own right, and I don't think she needs superpowers beyond that of her mimicking the abilities of others, but I digress. We'll save it for the podcast.
Type shit.
We do. It's called Screen Crush Rewind, available on
I agree with what he's saying, but like,
so the question
I'm glad they went that way.
Will Maya be classified as a mutant? The MCU retconned the history of Ms. Marvel by making her a mutant for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So I'm wondering if we'll learn that Maya's connection to her ancestors was synonymous with the activation of a mutant gene that runs in her family. With Avengers 5, formerly the Kang Dynasty, now being reworked into a very different movie.
You'll see.
Going around with an Avengers versus film. So maybe as more mutants appear in the Universe 616, maybe we could see Echo join the ranks of the X-Men in that war to come between our two big groups of heroes. And that film could also parallel the events of Captain America Civil War by bringing in a second version of the Sokovia Accords that registers all superhumans as mutants and brings a mutant registration act just like they do in the comics. Well, that would be pretty cool, right? I mean, Maya's native heritage would parallel perfectly with the story about a group trying to categorize people who are different into certain groups and to control their way of life. Let me know if you think Maya should be a mutant down in the comments below. So, during this flashback revealing Maya's mother's healing abilities, we cut to the scene of Maya and her mother's wreck. Now, this paints a picture of what may have sent Maya down her more violent path in life. Maya, at a young age, seeing her mother, a literal healer, get killed in a car wreck could amplify Maya's grief because she was unable to resurrect her mother. Seeing her healer mother die would also be a catalyst for sending Maya down a path of revenge and embracing those violent impulses rather than the healing nature of her ancestors. When Chola goes to see Scully about her old sewing machine, absolutely adorable that he kept it all these years, by the way, on Scully's t-shirt we can see a Choctaw tribal photo. And when the two part, they speak in Choctaw to one another, a callback to this scene from earlier in the season.
You used to smell like butter when I talked Indian to you.
Now, when Chola meets Kingpin, we hear him say,
I've lost someone.
Now, this could be a reference to the loss of his father, which has been central to the series and this episode. But I'm wondering if it could also be a reference to Vanessa.
Tonight, I'm just a man enjoying the company of a captivating woman.
See, Vanessa was the love of Kingpin's life and was central to his journey in the Netflix series, but we haven't heard any mention of her since he made his return in Hawkeye. In the series finale of Daredevil, we see Kingpin surrender and promise to leave Foggy Nelson and Karen Page alone in exchange for Daredevil promising not to go after Vanessa as Matt Murdock in a court of law.
And you want to terminate your fucking Nelson, because if you do, I will go after your wife.
But Kingpin is now back at it, running his criminal empire seemingly without fear of Matt going after Vanessa. So I wouldn't be surprised to learn that she is dead. This could also explain why Kingpin feels so alone and is seeking to reconnect with Maya. Here we see a Roxxon gas station. Now Roxxon is in
makes sense.
and has also appeared many times in the MCU. We've seen it in all 3 Iron Man films, as well as in the Daredevil series, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Agent Carter, Cloak and Dagger, Runaways, and most recently in the Loki series. Roxxon's pretty much a catch-all evil corporation in Marvel Comics, and I've always been hoping that we would see that kind of amplified in the MCU, especially from the Jason Aaron Thor run, which introduced a Roxxon CEO named Darian Agger who could turn into a Minotaur. Look, Roxxon has a lot of really cool potential, apart from just seeing it as an Easter egg. I really hope they can take advantage of this in the future thing. Doesn't matter. Let's move on. So next we see Maya remove the contact lens that Kingpin gave her in the previous episode that displayed virtual sign language. Now when Maya removes the lens, this is meant to symbolize that Maya is done seeing the world through the lens that Kingpin forced on her, and she's done being manipulated. Although, I wouldn't be surprised if somebody offered her another contact lens in the future so she could team up with heroes who don't necessarily know sign language. You know, more as a narrative shortcut. Now here again, we see the Viz Kinetic acting as a warning of something bad having happened, that being the abduction of Bonnie and Chola by the Kingpin. So Chola hasn't made her art since her daughter, Maya's mom, has passed away, but she's now returned to her craft by making Maya some armor, contributing to the protection that's been provided by Maya's other ancestors. Now on the armor, we can see the spiral symbol that we've been seeing throughout the series. We also see the Choctaw sun symbol, this hand with an eye symbol, which is called a Han, including Islam and Judaism. Traditionally, it's used to ward off evil spirits. So Maya is visited by the spirit of her mother, where she is transported back to the car wreck that shaped Maya's life. And this reminded us a lot of this scene from Spider-Man 2 between Peter and Uncle Ben.
All of those times I counted on you to have the courage to take those dreams.
So in this moment, Maya's mother is able to heal her heart and break her from her grief by returning her to the place and time where her heart was broken. Now this is similar to what we'll see Maya do for Kingpin later in the episode. Now throughout our coverage of the series, we have talked about how Maya's ancestors have been echoing through her, and that is exactly what they confirmed here in this episode, and by giving Maya her hero name. Similar to how in Ms. Marvel we saw her parents give her hero name. At the powwow, we see Choctaw Davis performing a ceremonial dance, and in this wide shot, we can see the spiral symbol that we have seen throughout the series. Now, in our episode 1 breakdown, we talked about this spiral symbol and how it appears in nature, and it's often seen as proof of design, especially the spiral that is the golden ratio. Recur to the spiral, it's exactly
Streaming. Well, about to get off the stream, but I'm watching YouTube, eating some peach rings.
How that creation echoes throughout their heritage up into the present day, and they make the spiral shape as part of their data.
I literally text you what you was doing, and I guess you saw that, and you decided to call me.